Good morning. Yeah, good to be back. I want to read to you one passage. We're in Matthew chapter 9. It says, Jesus traveled through all of the towns and villages of that area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news and the kingdom. And he healed every kind of disease and illness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. He said to the disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest, ask to send more workers into the fields." All right, you can be seated. That's kind of what we're talking about today. If this is your first time, I'm Pastor Joey. I'm the lead pastor here at Grace Church, and I've been gone the last 2 weeks. I was on vacation the first week, and then the last week I was in Colorado doing a hike with Manna. And we had 2 weeks in a row, we had guys fill in for me. And Jared spoke the first week. I don't know if he's in here or not. Did a good job. And then last week Mason spoke, and he did a good job too. I don't know if they're watching online or if they're in here, but I'm really grateful for the leaders in our church. Now this is a different sermon, okay? I always do this whenever, about the middle of the summer, we take a family vacation, and it's about that time that I'm starting to think about going and selling insurance or doing something else with my life, just because I get overwhelmed and busy with everything, and then I get away, and God reminds me what I'm supposed to be doing. But while I'm gone, it was good to have leaders in our church. I remember years ago that I always felt like I couldn't take a vacation because if I did, the church would just collapse and it wouldn't be there when I got back. But the last several years, instead of me trying to do everything, I've been focused on trying to raise up good leaders in our church from within our church. And God has answered that, and we have some phenomenal people, Jared and Mason and many other people in our church. So I'm grateful for that. Now, so today, we're in the middle of a sermon series on emotions, and I'll pick that up next week. I was gone, and God put some things on my heart, and I just want to talk to you about some things that are on my heart. And it all started so last week, Manna is an organization. We give them money every time there's a first-time guest, and we give $5, and that $5 will feed a kid for a week. And so Manna has feeding centers all around the world, and right now they're building a brand new orphanage in the Philippines. And so to try to raise money for that, they did this hike. And so I went out there to try to raise money. And I want to encourage you to give to that. If you haven't, $1 would help, $5 would go a long ways, $20 would be great. But that's what that whole thing was for. And so one of the days, last Sunday I flew out there, and then started hiking on Monday, and we hiked up to over 14,000 feet. If you're on social media and you saw my post, it was insane. You don't want to do that. You don't want, you need your body time to acclimate. And on day one, I was hating life. And I was about halfway up this mountain, and I started thinking, what am I doing with my life? You ever ask yourself that question? Like, what am I doing? No, seriously, what am I doing? I'm not in shape for this. I'm not prepared for all this. And I was all of the guys that were hiking with me had been there for a whole week. They had already started the week before, so they were acclimated, and they had their trail legs. I didn't, and so I was trying to keep up with them, and it killed me. And I just started thinking, what am I doing? And then that question just kind of rattled around my brain the whole day. Like, what are we doing? You ever ask that question, what are you doing with your life? You should. That should be a regular question that you ask yourself, because it keeps you from doing stuff you're not meant to do, and it causes you to get back on track. And so I thought about that. What is our church doing? What are we involved in? What you take a step back and go, what are we doing? We do a lot of stuff. And so I came back with this. I just wanted to talk to you about this and kind of hone things in, because I feel like our church was started in 2014, so we're 8.5 years old as a church. And in the early days, it was just fresh and exciting. We had all these new people coming, and we would just have gobs of people standing at the door, welcoming people. And we still have that somewhat, But the longer we become a church, the older we get as a church, the more we seem to just settle in, and it's just ho-hum, it's church again. Like, right? Some of you guys, you got up this morning and you were debating on whether or not you were going to come. And you're like, I was supposed to be at the first service, so I'm just going to come to the second service. And you didn't want to be. And I'm just telling you, listen, life is too short. You're not living forever. Okay? And someone came up to me after the first service, like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm really fired up. I really am. And I know that life is too short for us just to go through the motions. And some of you guys, just like me, sometimes I go through the motions, and I want to get to a place. I want to be at a place where I pop up on Sunday morning. I don't even need to set an alarm. I'm up. I'm ready to go. I'll get my kids ready. So my wife gets our kids ready. But I'm excited about seeing you guys. I genuinely am. I genuinely look forward to every Sunday seeing you guys. Amen. And it's not a drudgery. It's not something like, oh, I got to go again. Listen, if that's your heart right now, you need a revival in your heart. And we all get like that at times. But what would it look like if this whole church, if everyone in our church was super excited about what God was doing in their life, and you couldn't contain it? You couldn't wait to get here on Sunday morning, because what you would do is you would get here early. Can I get an amen? Like, the first service starts at 9, and this service starts at 10:30. In the first service, 9 o'clock, I always stand at the back. I walk in, and right as the music's starting, and there's like 4 people in here. And I'm like, where is everybody? And then by the time I get up to preach, it looks like this. It's more full. And so I just want to encourage you to get to church, not on time, get to church early and grab some coffee and some donuts and meet some people you don't know, and just be excited. Seriously, like, when was the last time you were just like, I can't wait to get there? Right. You need to experience that. Anyways, I want to talk about this because I've had a chance to visit some different churches while I was gone, and I visit other churches throughout the year. Sometimes I'm asked to speak and share my story and different things like that. And I love going to other churches. I love to see what other people are doing. The church in America is not doing well, right? In a lot of churches, I've experienced this recently. I stood up to preach at a church, and literally everybody was in the back. I mean, it was an auditorium a little bit bigger than this and with more chairs. And in the first half, there was nobody up here. I'm like, you guys are a bunch of back row Baptists. What? And I was gonna make a move forward, and I was like, I don't know if their pastor spits a lot when he preaches. I don't know what precipitates that. But look, there's very few people in the front row. Like, people just don't like to. I know you like to sit towards the back. So as soon as we start the invitation, you're out the door. But listen, it needs to be. I don't know. We're getting ready. I'm getting ready to redo the stage, and I'm going to build it out. I haven't told anybody this yet, but I'm going to build it out all the way to here, and I'm taking all those chairs out. I'm making you guys all sit right here. This is one of the things I miss about our old building. Now, I love this building, but when we were on Nolan Road, we had this auditorium, and it was small, and I could see, like right now, I can see your guys' faces, and so I can tell if you're sleeping. I can throw something at you. I can just see but up here, I can't tell as much. The lights are blinding me, and so you kind of get away with stuff. So we're going to redo the stage, and I'm going to make you sit closer. Anyways, I'm just telling you that. Here's what I know about churches, okay? The average church in America is like 80 people, okay? Our church, on any given Sunday, we average about 250 people that show up. Now, out of that, and that's good, yeah. And we're blessed. We have some phenomenal people, and we have momentum. But out of the 250 people that are here today, 50 of you guys won't be here next week. And there will be a whole new 50. Our numbers will stay the same, but 50 new people will be here. And it might be 75. I don't know. But 50 people will be gone next week, and a whole new 50. And some people only come to church about once a month. And that's okay. I feel like you're missing out. Like, I feel like you don't understand. If you do that, then you don't understand what the purpose of church is. But I'm not browbeating anybody. But it's just what it is. We have about a group of 50 that will be here this week that won't be here next week. And so every church has that. And so here's the life cycle of the church. And this is, if you start a business or any organization, there's a life cycle to anything. And what it is like in a church context, Every church in America at one point did not exist, and somebody came along, usually a pastor, usually it's one person or his family or a group of people, and they say, this church needs a good gospel preaching church in it. And so they would have a vision, they would cast the vision and get some people to, and if the church was successful, they would get a core group of people, they would start this church, and it would grow. Okay, that's a life cycle of every church. But every organization, every business, every church that's ever existed eventually gets to a point where they're not growing and they kind of plateau. And it's at that point that a church needs to make a decision. These are hard decisions to make because at that point, you got to figure out, what do I need to change in the church and what do we need to keep the same? And sadly, most churches in America get to the point where they're plateauing and they're the last to know. Other people see it, like, you're not growing, you guys haven't had any new convert, no one's been baptized in a long time, but they refuse to change, and eventually they start to die. If you don't change, and this is, we regularly do this. I regularly look at our church and go, okay, we got like 250 people, we got up to 300 for a while. Okay, what do we need to change so that we don't start to decline? And I think personally, it's the vision of the church. Like I'm just going to lay that out for you today, feel like what we're supposed to be involved in, and we're always changing something. I know for some of you guys, it makes you super uncomfortable because like we're always changing, but that's the culture of our church. Like we're not stuck in any mode. Like we don't have a lot of traditions at our church, and I kind of like it that way. So that's the life cycle of the church, and I talked to a pastor last week in Colorado, and he's in a smaller town, and he's got a small Baptist church, and I just was talking to him about, he was like, people just don't really want to come to church anymore, and I just was trying to encourage him, and I was like, people do want to come to church. They just want to come to a church that's inviting to them. You know what I mean? A church that's relevant, a church that's giving them a hopeful message. And God is still in the life-changing business. He is. I see that every single week at our church, okay? And so I love our church. I just want to say that. And I'll tell you from the outset, because this is just basically what I'm talking about today. I know we have problems. I do. I understand that. But we also are a church. We are growing, and we have issues. You know why we have problems? Because you're here. If you're looking for the perfect church, don't go there because you'll ruin it. Right? Because you're not perfect, and we have a lot of drama in our church. We have issues that come up because we have people who, I have a lot of baggage from my past, and I bring that into my relationship with you. I brought that into my marriage. I bring that into every relationship. It's just what we have to deal with, right? And so you guys are looking at me like listen, I'm trying to encourage you today about our church. I love our church, but that doesn't mean that we don't have problems. And I want you to be a part of what's going on here, so that let me just take it all the way back. Like, what are we doing? Like, what is Grace Church? We do a lot of stuff, but the main thing, we have a mission statement that drives everything that I try to do in our church, and it's this: Grace Church exists to help people find and follow Jesus. And so that's two-part. In the Bible, the Great Commission is two parts. It's evangelism and discipleship. The evangelism is, there's a lot of churches that are no longer seeing people saved. That's just reality. And when you do that, here, let me give you a secret. On that life cycle of the church, whenever churches plateau, do you know the number one thing that happens to cause them to start dying is that they turn inward? All of their focus, all of their resources, all their money, all their attention is paid to the people that are already here. And sometimes, because our church is always out in the community, we're always involved in outreach, so sometimes people will say, well, what about me? I kind of feel left out. And I don't mean for you to feel left out, because as we go out in the community, we want you to come with us. That's spiritual maturity, right? We don't want you to sit. And I realize sometimes there's older folks, and you're like, I paid my dues, and I don't have the energy to get out there like you. Look, you could come up during the week, and you can pray. You can sip coffee with us and pray about the needs of our community. There's always something for you to do. But there are people that live across the street that need Jesus. Okay? There are people that live next door to them. They need Jesus, and we're trying to get them to come to our church. If our church is not involved in that, then what are we doing? Right? So as I go around the country and I look at churches, and there are some churches there's some churches that stop preaching the Bible. okay? And that's a problem. And they just kind of blend in with their community. That's a problem because and then there are some churches that they're not preaching the gospel and they're not inviting lost people and no one's getting saved. And you know what those churches are? Listen to me. I know this is offensive and it's a hard pill to swallow, but a church that doesn't see lives changed is just a social club. That's all it is. It's not fulfilling the Great Commission. That's all it is. It's no different than a country club. It's no different than the whatever, Chamber of Commerce. That's all it is. And our church, as long as I'm the pastor, we're never going to become that church. Not as long as God's given me breath and a vision. We're always going to be out in the community trying to, and we're not doing it for the numbers. We're not doing it to puff ourselves up and pat ourselves on the back. I believe, and I want everyone to look at me for a second because this is the most important thing. I believe that this Bible is true. I believe it from cover to cover. I even believe the maps that are in there. You know what I mean? I believe the index. But I just believe every word's true. And when God said, if you read the Bible, sometimes people will say, well, just read the red letters of Jesus. I don't recommend you do that because Jesus was hardcore. Jesus was not who most people think. I mean, some people like to quote him and take him out of context, but Jesus talked about hell. Jesus talked about hell more than he did anything else. He talked about hell more than anybody did. And I'm just telling you, everyone in this room, you have a soul that's going to live for eternity. You will spend eternity after you die. You will either go to heaven if you know Jesus, or you will go to hell if you don't know Jesus. And that's not my opinion. That's what Jesus said. And since I believe that, what kind of person would I be if I really genuinely believed that the people across the street were on their way to hell and I didn't go share that good news with them? It's not good news if it's not shared. So that's why I have to always take a step back and go, okay, our church is getting muddy. Like in the early days, there was so much, it's so easy to just go, okay, here's what we're doing. And because you know what I've discovered is people who remember what it was like to walk through those doors for the first time. You remember some of you guys remember what that's like. Like the first time you walked into a church because your buddy or relative was inviting you and they were going, could you come check out this church? They got a weird pastor and all that, whatever. And you're like, I like the music or whatever. And they invited you and you walked in and you do what everybody does. You walk through the front door and you're looking like, do I know anybody here? Is there anybody else like me? Are these people holding snakes? Like, what kind of weird traditions are they doing? And so you're looking around to see how weird this church is, and then I'm assuming you liked it since you keep coming back, but sometimes over time, you forget what it was like to be the person who was new and to walk through those doors terrified for the first time. And so if you remembered that, if you can remember that, the next Sunday when you see somebody walk in and they're just wide-eyed, and you can tell it's their first time, just walk up and say, hey, man, I'm so glad to see you. You might give them a bear hug. I mean, I don't know with COVID, can we still do that? I mean, I think we're getting back to normal, but I don't like it when people bear hug me. Oh, you want to hear a story? I was on the airplane coming back. This drunk guy, I was witnessing him the whole time. He was drunker than a skunk. He couldn't even get off the plane, and he was going to pick up his rental car. I was just praying for him. And at the end of this hour and 15-minute flight, he did it's like nails on top. He goes, can I just give you a hug? And I was like, because he knew I was a pastor and he was just peppering me with questions the whole time. And he goes, can I just give you a hug? And I guess, and he just gave me a hug right on the plane. I was like, oh my gosh, he's sweating all over me. Anyways, it's just, but I don't remember why. Oh, hugging people. You know, and as a matter of fact, Chad's in here. We need to go back to doing handshaking. We need to have a handshaking time. We got rid of that during COVID. And I know that some of you guys hate the handshaking thing, but others of you guys, you need it. And so we're going to do it, and you can just go to the bathroom at that time. You slip out, like I can use the restroom. That's okay. But I think people are starved for attention. And I'm just going to warn you guys. I told someone in the first service before I got up, I said, this is going to go about 15 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes, whichever, I don't even know. And the first service, we have time restraints because the second service has to start. But I don't have any time restraints on this. Chiefs ain't playing today, so now listen, I don't want to go forever, but I just want to talk to you about what's on my heart and kind of the church that I want us to be, okay? Because we get to decide that. don't we? Don't we get to decide the kind of church that we want to be? And we can be any kind of church we want. I don't want to be a social club church. I don't want to be an uppity church. I want to be a church that just rolls out the red carpet for people when they walk in. I don't care what their background is. There's people in this room, man, you need to hear their story. In the next few weeks, Tamara's in here. I'm going to be telling you her story. I'm trying to get her permission. But Tamara, I didn't even talk about her in the first service, but she walked in. How long have you been coming to our church? 6 months, and it doesn't even seem like that long ago. I remember the first time she walked in, and she kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. She was by herself. She was just like this, and she sat on that back row, and I went up and talked to her, and honestly, Tamara, I thought she probably won't come back. I don't know why I thought that. She came back the next week, and then I found out that I went to high school with her mom, and she just kept coming back. She's like a dog, just keeps showing up, and we keep feeding them. I'm just kidding. No, that was bad. No, but I love her. You know what I mean? You need to hear her story. She's got a story. Everyone in this room's got a story, and that's what it's about, man. We've got to stop playing church. Do you know what I mean by that? I feel like we play church too much. This is not what church is supposed to be only about. And I would say probably the vast majority of the people that come to Grace Church, this is all you experience is the worship service and me getting up and trying to entertain you and show you some funny videos and preaching the Bible to you. I don't mean that the wrong way. Like, I want to engage with you, and I want you to leave here changed. But there's so much more to church than a Sunday morning experience. Like, we can't do life together when you're all just staring at me. I'm the only one up here talking. I'm the only one with a microphone. How is this a conversation? It's not. But if you join a life group, you get to sit down and you get to talk and process through what we talked about on Sunday morning. Amen. And you get to give input, and you can go, hey, I didn't like Pastor Joey's hair that Sunday, or whatever. I disagree with what he's doing, whatever. Like, you can talk about it. You can go, great thing is go, I don't understand that. Because sometimes I'm not the best speaker. Sometimes I say stuff, and you're like, I don't know what he was talking about by that. But you get to talk about that in life group. Anyways, so let's get into this passage. This is in Matthew chapter 9. And while I was away, I was reading through this, and God was speaking to me and going, I feel like he was speaking to me about some of the things I need to remind our church what we're supposed to be involved in. And so in chapter 9, if you want to give you the context, if you look in chapter 8, at the end of that chapter, Jesus had an encounter with these two guys who were demon-possessed, and he healed them of the demons. He cast them out, and then he sent them on their way to go preach the gospel around the world. And so Jesus went back. During this time, I just want you to listen to this, okay? In chapter 9, everywhere he goes, bring me all your sick people, and he just heals them. And he was feeding people, and he was healing every kind of disease. It says he healed every kind of disease and illness that there was. And the crazy thing, I would like to think that if I saw that, I would just be on the sideline just going, look at that. That dude was blind. He's got his eyesight back. This guy was deaf. Now he can hear. Like, I would like to think that I would be excited about that. But there was a group that wasn't excited. Every time Jesus did something, there was a group of people over here just mumbling, going, I can't believe he did that. You can't believe what? That he healed a blind guy? I can't believe that he did it on a Sunday. Or I can't believe who cares what day it is, right? And they were just mad, and every step of the way, Jesus was just having a fight with people. And it blows me away. And so I started thinking about that. I was like, why is it that when there's all kinds of good things happening, you can pick out the one negative thing? Like, some people feel like that's a gift. That's not a good thing to have. If you're carrying around a hammer, you know what everything looks like? A nail. If you got a hammer in your hand, it looks like you just want to hit everything. Well, that's how life is. It's so easy. It takes no effort at all to look and go, there's a problem. Oh, there's a problem. Oh, she's got flaws. He's got flaws. Yeah, anybody can do that. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes that's my nature. Sometimes I get into that mode, and I find myself being negative and just critical of everybody. And God just kind of slaps me up outside the head and just go, no, listen. Choose to be positive, because that's a choice. Sometimes I have to make myself go, yeah, our world has got crazy stuff. Like the pastor I talked to in Colorado, in Colorado, people aren't beating down the doors to come to church. It's harder to get people to go to church in Colorado than it is here. But God's still changing lives. I met some of them out there. I've met some people that were lost and now they're found. God is still in the miracle working business. And so I'll tell you this one story. I see this all the time. And back in September, most of you guys know, my wife and I got to go to London. And one of our missionaries, Justin Rhodes, they started a recovery group, and they asked me to come and kind of help kick it off. And I was honored to do that. And so they let me speak on Sunday morning, and then they did a special Sunday night service, and they like printed up posters, and they were like, I think people thought I was famous or something out there, because they made me look famous. They're like, come hear this, guy, he wrote a book and all this stuff. I'm like, you guys have no idea. Nobody cares about me. But people showed up. They had like 70 people show up on Sunday night that had never been at their church before. And it was an amazing thing. And I was in my element. Like I felt like in the groove. Yeah, this may be insider baseball, but if you've ever spoken in public, some of you guys, like that's your terrified, like that's your number one fear is to speak in public. And I get that. I used to be that way too. But sometimes I get up here and I preach a sermon and I'm like, that sucked. You know what I mean? Like I step off here, I just go, I'll try better next week, right? Is this the way it is? And then other times I go, man, that was awesome. That went really well. And I don't know why one works and one doesn't. But that night I was on. And Sunday morning I preached. I shared my testimony, and then I shared more of it. That I did the vase demonstration that Sunday night, and all these people at the end of the message, they came forward and flooded the altar, and there were people that got saved, and I was just like, and that doesn't happen over there. You know what I mean? Like what just happened, they said, that never happens, and the Holy Spirit was just moving and alive, and it was great. And then I found out the next day that there were a couple of guys there furious. They walked out. They didn't like what I said, and I was like, well, what did I say? Because I probably said something that ticked them off. I mean, I do that every week with you guys. But I was like, I don't think I said anything offensive. And so I was talking to the two missionaries, and they go, Joey, listen, these guys are just negative and critical about everything. They go, what you did on Sunday morning, Sunday night is exactly why we wanted you to come here. It went perfectly. And so I felt better about that. And then I met these guys, and one of them came up and apologized to me later in the week. He goes, listen, and you know what it was? They go to Oxford Seminary up there, and which is a very prestigious thing, and they wanted me to just open the Bible and just expound the text. They didn't really care about my story or seeing lives change. All they wanted was for me to feed them, and they didn't get that night, so they got upset. And I was like, you didn't see all the people that got saved? You didn't see the altars flooded? You didn't care about that? All you cared about was, are you going to feed me? You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason why, most of you don't know this, there's a seminary in our town, okay? I call it a cemetery, but it's a seminary in our town, and we don't have any seminary students. You ever wondered that? Some of you that go to church, like, why don't we have seminary students? Because they don't like the way we do church here, and I'm okay with that. I don't need them. I don't want them here because they come in and try to tell us how we're supposed to do it. And I'm like, no, we're just going to let the Holy Spirit lead us, right? And so we don't have I'm not against seminary students. I went to Bible college. I'm not against any of that stuff. But I'm just telling you, it's so easy to be critical. I'm going to get to this. I am going to get to this. I want to tell you one other story, okay? There was somebody that came to our church. I want to say this right, because I don't want you to, people already think I'm cold-hearted sometimes. When people leave our church, it affects me. Sometimes people, one time years ago, a family came to me and said, hey, we're leaving the church, but don't take it personal. And I was like, how can I not take that personal? Like, this is my life. This is you guys. This is my family. This is my church family. I love all of you guys, and I hate to see anybody leave. It breaks my heart, honestly. But sometimes I encourage people to go, and the reason is this, okay? This person, somebody left our church a while back, a long time ago, and what they did was, I knew they weren't happy. I could just tell that. And so every Sunday I would get done preaching, and I would, like I said, sometimes I feel horrible, and so sometimes I need to remind you guys, it's okay. You can come and give me encouragement. Sometimes I need it, you know what I mean? If you got anything out of the message, you can come up and say, hey, that spoke to me, okay? And if you got nothing, then just keep it to yourself, I guess. But because sometimes I struggle with that. But this person, for a while, every Sunday would make a beeline for me, and they would come up and they would go, oh, hey, look, you spelled something wrong in the bulletin, or you messed up on the screen. And I just remember, like, it happened, like, for several months in a row. And I just remember thinking to this person, that's all you got out of the message? Like you were sitting there waiting to, oh, look, I found a mistake. Like this person was coming to church and getting nothing out of the message during the worship, was getting nothing out of it because they were just thinking about, what can I find that's wrong? This person had a hammer in their hand and everything looked like a nail. And so when this person came to me and said, hey, we're going to go find another church, I was like, good, please. And I don't mean that wrongly. Like, I wish that they would come back. We have people leave and come back, and we stay friends and all that. But I was like, life is too short to be miserable at church. If you don't get anything out of the messages or out of the worship every week, go find a church where you can. There's seriously no hard feelings about that. I want all of you to get involved. I want you to be here. But my life is too short for me to just go to church every week and be ticked off about everything, right? Life's too short for you to do that in your marriage. Life's too short for you to work a job that you absolutely hate. Why do you do that to yourself? Okay? Now, so let's get into this. I said all that. Now, Matthew 9, this is the passage. I love this. Matthew 9 says this. It says, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at his tax collector booth. Follow me and be my disciple, Jesus said. So Matthew got up, and what did he do? And he followed Jesus. That's amazing. Now, listen, you know anything about Matthew? Anybody for 100 points? What was Matthew's other name? Levi, okay? Now, Matthew's the one that wrote the book of Matthew. He was a tax collector. You know what that is? He worked for the IRS. That's been in the news lately. The government just hired 87,000 more IRS agents because they don't get enough money, right? They need to spend more money, and they want your money and my money. I know, it makes you grumble. But yeah, this is not getting into politics or anything, but I do have a disdain for just government. I do, from local all the way up. Whenever I hear about corruption and about they're spending all of our money on what? You know, it just makes me furious, and so I can't watch it. Some of you guys are with me. But Matthew was a tax collector. You know why they hated him? Matthew was a despised tax collector, is what he's called, because his Jewish people, he was working for the Roman government. So his job was to come collect your money, take it to the Roman government. So he would say, okay, you owe this much. Oh, and I get a little fee on top of that. And he would take a little extra for himself. And they're like, bro, you're one of our people. Like, you're my cousin. Why are you taking my money? And so people like Levi were despised. They hated him. Now, he had an encounter with Jesus, and he was saved. Okay? Now look in verse 10. It says, later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. You know what disreputable means? Just look around. They're here. Okay, you're sitting with a bunch of disreputable sinners. We are. You are, I am, okay? And some are notorious and some are famous, whatever. But listen, you know what I love about this? So there was Levi, there was Matthew, had an encounter with Jesus. And he was just like, so he was like, okay, this guy, Jesus, just changed my life. And I got all these friends that still work for the IRS, and they need Jesus, amen? And he was like, how can I get these people to follow Jesus? So he goes, I know what I'll do. I'll throw a barbecue. So he had a barbecue, and he cooked some steaks. I don't know what all he made. I mean, just imagine burgers and brats and all that stuff. And he has this dinner, and he has Jesus and his disciples, and then he invites all of his tax collector friends. And he was like, hey, have you guys met Jesus? And I don't know how many of them got saved or if any of them did, but I'm just like, what an awesome idea. When was the last time we used to call these Levi parties, okay? You should consider having a Levi party. And it's a thing where you go, I got some friends, I got people that I work with, or they live in my neighborhood, or they're relatives, or it's just a friend, and they don't know Jesus. And they won't probably come to church. You know what I mean? Like, you've invited them to church. They're like, I'm good on all that. But maybe if you had like a barbecue and you invited some people from your church and then those people, and then they could see that the Christians aren't super weird. I mean, some are, but they're not like super, super weird and stuck up. And you know what I mean? Anyway, does that make sense? Because you guys are all just looking at me like you're frozen. So it's called a Levi party. You should consider doing it. You should invite people to church. And if they say, I don't want to come to church, have a party. Throw a party like Levi did and see if they would come to that. I'll come. If there's free food, you know I'm there. You know what I mean? So Look in verse 11. So he throws this party, and it says, "But when the Pharisees saw this, they asked the disciples, 'Why does your teacher eat with such scum?'" Can you imagine that? I can, because I hear stuff like that. I hear people say stuff like that about the people that go to our church who used to be out there in the streets dealing drugs, like me. The people, like I would fit into that category. And so I'm offended by people that, but why is it that church people have this look down on people? And the longer I'm a Christian, I've been a Christian for 25 years now. And it's hard for me to remember walking in the door for the first time. And so sometimes I look at people and I misjudge them. You ever do that? I did this in Florida. We were in Florida 2 weeks ago, and we were staying at a church. They have a missions apartment, and it's a friend of mine. He lets us stay there, and I preached at his church on Sunday. And during the week, I was out riding my bike, and I saw this homeless guy living at the church. Like he would sleep under their carport at night. And so my wife was scared of him. I'm just kidding. I'm not trying to throw her under the bus. But we would pull in late at night, and we were like, "Get the stuff. There's a guy over there. You know how it is. Come on, don't judge me." And we're just like, "Okay, hopefully he doesn't break into our car." And I just had all these preconceived ideas about this guy. Well, one day I was out riding my bike. It was the middle of the day, and he was over underneath the tree. And I was like, "I'm going to go talk to this guy," And I probably shouldn't say this, but like I went and hid my wallet back in the room. You know what I mean? I was just like, this guy might cut me and rob. I don't know, but I was just like, but I want to go talk to him. And again, I just had my mind made up about what kind of guy he was. His name was Brian. And I just went over and I sat down next to him under the tree. It was hot that day. And I was like, "Hey, man, what's up?" And when he turned to me, half of his face was missing. Like he had cancer. And I sat down next to him, and I was just like, "Tell me your story, man. What's going on?" And he'd been homeless for like 5 years. And what I thought was going to come out of his mouth, I'm looking around for bottles of beer or drugs or whatever. And as he told me his story, he was like, he goes, "The reason why I'm homeless is 25 years ago, I had a felony. I had pot on me, and the cops arrested me and gave me a felony." He goes, "And so no one will rent to me because I have a felony on my record." And my wife, he goes, "My ex-wife, we kind of stay together. She's living in a shelter right now because no one will rent to either one of us. And we can't." Now, I know that that's true because there's some places here in Kansas City, some organizations that will they'll help you get into a place. So if that's an issue for you, let us know. But I was just heartbroken for this guy. And I'm a pretty distrusting person. So, I was like, I don't buy a lot of what people say, but this guy was sincere. And he was just telling me, he goes, "I haven't drank or done drugs in 20 years. He goes, "So that's not why I'm homeless." He goes, "I just can't find a place." He goes, he was in the military, so he gets disability. He gets a check. So because I was like, "Do you need me to buy you some food or something to drink?" He was like, "No, I'm good on all that." He goes, "I have a son that lives nearby, but he just got married, and I don't want to impose on him." You know what I mean? And I was just hearing all this stuff and just thinking, you're a freaking jerk. I'd prejudge this guy. Like I was like, he's going to be a drug addict and all this stuff. And I just sat and listened to his story for like 30 minutes, and he was telling me all these things, and he's not a drug addict. He's not an alcoholic. I asked him about where he was at with God, and because I was like, half of his head was missing, his ear was missing, his eye was missing. He went through cancer. And I was like, after all that, man, and you living on the streets, are you mad at God? He was like, "Nah, man, I talk to God all the time." Now, I don't know if he's a Christian, but I was trying to talk to him about that. And I just, what I came away from that just going, this guy just needs someone to hear his story. You know what I mean? He just needs someone to listen to and treat him like a human being and not like, "Oh, this guy's a drug addict." And I think that we need to do more of that. I think our community has lots of people who have given up on church because the last church they went into, people were like, "You're a freaking drug addict. Get out of here." Or, "Look at the way you dress." And I want you to know that our church, as long as I'm the pastor, I want us to be welcoming to anybody that walks through the door and smells like they haven't had a shower in 2 weeks. I want that to be the person that you make a beeline to and say, "Hey, I'm glad you came to our church today. You are welcome here." I want our church to be that kind of church. And I don't know if we are, to be honest with you. I don't know if we are. I don't know if a person who came in messed up on drugs or drunk, how would you treat that person? How do they get treated? Because I've talked to lots of people that just tell me, I don't want anything to do with church because every experience ended up like that. They were just looking at me and treat me like a second-class citizen. And God forbid this church ever becomes like that. So let's go back to this. The Pharisees said, why does Jesus eat with such scum? Can you imagine that? Whenever I read this, I thought of this right here. Go to the next slide. I was like, it always reminds me of this. How dare you? Remember that little girl? And then when I found that online, I found this other picture. Go to the next one. And this is kind of an inside joke from a few weeks ago for me. When I see people putting pineapple on pizza, I'm like, how dare you? That's me. I'm like, if you put pineapple on pizza, you just ruined it. You know what I mean? Anyways, that's just me, though. Anyways, so let's go on and let's finish this out. It says, verse 12, when Jesus heard this, so they were like, how come your teacher eats with such scum? Which, by the way, I heard this guy, Tim Ross, preach a sermon recently, and he goes, hey, listen, he goes, you always hear that Jesus hung out with sinners. Jesus didn't hang out with sinners. Sinners hung out with him. And that's a good distinction. Jesus was always surrounded by sinners, but whenever Jesus was around all of these sinners, he didn't change to become like them. They changed to become like him, right? And that's an important thing that we need to remember. So it says in verse 12, when Jesus heard this, he said, healthy people don't need a doctor. He says, but sick people do, right? Can I just say this? I want Grace Church to always be a hospital for sinners, not a museum for saints. We're not that. Come on, man. We can't get to a point where we forgot what it was like to be lost. So he says, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. Then he added, now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners. That's me, right? That's some of you. Some of you might think you're righteous, and some of you know you're a sinner. Reality is we're all sinners, and we need to remember that. Verse 35 says Jesus traveled through, and this is the part I read earlier. He traveled through all the towns and villages of that area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. And he healed every kind of disease and illness. Now look at this in verse 36. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion. Another version says, when he looked at the crowds, he was moved with compassion. Why? Because they were confused and they were helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And honestly, guys, people in our community, this is what it is. When I look at all the people overdosing on drugs, when I look at all the people that, just flood the liquor store every Friday, Saturday night, they're at the clubs, they're looking for something. They have a void in their soul. And I know what it is, because that used to be me. And how dare I not share that with people? People are confused. This is why Tamara and so many other people, the first time they walked into our church, they walk in. You don't always see it, but up here I can just see it. They walk in and they're just like, I'm confused. Like they're confused about life. They're confused about what church is supposed to be like, which is great. I was there too. But they're looking for hope. And they're wondering, is this going to be a church that I can fit in? Or is this going to be another church that just looks down on me because I have a past? Right? And we want to be a church that just goes, hey, listen, you're hurting. The people in our community are struggling. They're hurting. They're confused. And it's like this. It's like we're all sheep, but they don't have a pastor. They don't have a shepherd. And everybody needs a shepherd. That's why I'm telling you, if this is your first time at our church, I'm glad you're here. If you just come on Sunday morning, you need a shepherd. And you need the good shepherd. The great shepherd is Jesus. But you also need a pastor, not just for the day that you die so I can preach your funeral, or when you get married so I can do your wedding. You need to get involved in a life group, and there's some shepherding that goes in that too, because you need it more than just once a week. If this is all you get, you're not getting fed, okay? You're just not. You need to be a part of something. And our church is trying to be a church family. So let me just finish it out with verse 37. Here's what he says. He goes, he said to the disciples, he goes, the harvest is great, but the workers are few. He goes, so pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into his fields. And this is why I wanted to do this message. I tried to cast the vision of what kind of church I want this to be. And I know I can't do this on myself. This has got to be something that we go do as a family and as an army. And I think, here's what I talked to God about this week. I'm like, what would it look like if we had 90% of the people that go to Grace Church involved in life groups, in serving, in giving? And he was like, 90%, that would be a miracle. You know, I really felt like that's what he said. And then he was like, how about 50%? And I was like, 50% will be a huge improvement. If we had half of the people that come to this church and call Grace Church home, if half of you guys would get involved in a life group, if half of you would start giving, if half of you would start trusting God with your finances, with your just different things in your family, if half of you guys would go, you know what, this year I'm going to get sober. I'm going to finally set those addictions aside. We would turn this city upside down. So a couple things I want to do as I close out, and I'm asking you to join up with our church and come be a part of this. A few weeks ago, a lot of you guys know this, I got invited to preach at a prison, at Algoa Prison. It was life-changing for me. I preached at this. I went to prison 25 years ago. That's where I got saved, and many of you know that. And I've never been back, which, by the way, if you'll pray for me on October 2nd, I get to go back to Boonville, where I got saved, first time in 25 years, and I get to do the whole service. And so, yeah, it's going to be... But I went to Algoa Prison, me and a couple other guys, and it just gives me goosebumps thinking about it. There was this small chapel, and it was during their rec time. So it was like you can choose to go play basketball or go sit in the air conditioning, or you can go to church. And we stood, there was 100 chairs in this chapel, and we opened up the doors, and 100 people came in, and we go, oh, you can't come in. There was at least 50 people we had to turn away, which just broke my heart. I was like, man, and we went away from there going, we're going to build a bigger chapel. So we're talking about doing that. But it was just awesome, and those guys chose to be there, first of all, and they sat there, and when the music started, first of all, it was good worship. Like one of the guys that was in prison was the worship leader, and he did really good. And they all raised their hands, and they all just let their inhibitions fly away or whatever, and they didn't care. And these guys were trapped in a prison. Some of them, they're going to go home sometime in the next 7 or 8 years. That's what Algoa is. But they worshiped with all their heart. And I stood in the back watching every one of them raise their voice to the top of their lungs, singing out with everything they had. And I was like, man, I wish Grace Church was like this. I wish we were like this. I wish people just didn't show up late. I wish people came in excited going, it's Sunday. I was like, man, I want our church to be like that. I don't know if we ever will get like that, but I admire those guys so much. And I talked to many of them, and I told them where we were at. And so I was like, you ever get out, you're from Independence, come visit us. And so hopefully we'll see them. But in our church, I want to show you this video, and we're going to end with this in just a second. This is a video I came across, and when I watched it on TikTok, I just started crying. Like, I don't admit that I cry very much, but I was by myself, and I was just like, man, that was deep. That was powerful. And it's a story. When this guy tells this story, I want you to think about the people in our community that we're trying to reach and see if it doesn't resonate with you. Let's watch this.
Shop owner puts a sign on his front door that says puppies for sale, because he knows it'll get the attention of a youngster that's interested in a puppy. A couple hours later, a young man walks in, and he asks the shop owner, he says, sir, how much are your puppies? And the shop owner says they're between $30 and $50 a piece. The young man pulls out $2.50. He says, I don't have enough to buy one, but will this get me the opportunity to see them? So the shop owner whistles, and out comes Mama with 5 puppies trailing behind her. The boy just smiles, and then coming out the door, trailing behind them all, is one that's dragging his leg, not moving very fast. And the young man says, that's the one I want. The shop owner says, look, I can't sell you that one. He's got a bad hinge on his leg. just doesn't operate right. He'll never run or jump or play like the rest of them. And the boy says, I'm going to give you $2.50 and I want you to take it. And I'm going to come in every week and I'm going to give you 50 cents until I paid full price for that dog. And the shop owner says, why would you want that animal? The boy bends over and he rolls up his pant leg. And the shop owner sees that he's got a metal leg. And the boy says, you see, I don't run or jump or play very well. And I think that puppy just needs somebody who understands him. You see, we all need somebody who understands us. We all need somebody who understands us. And don't let anybody ever tell you you're not worth full price. You're valuable. Peace.
Let's all stand with our heads bowed and eyes closed, and the band's going to come up here and sing. And I want you to think about that. I want to be the kind of church that reaches that puppy, because we know what it was like. I remember 25 years ago walking in church for the first time, and I was like that wounded dog. And there was a church that loved me. That's why I'm standing here today. If they would have looked down their nose at me or treated me like a second-class citizen, I don't think I would have went back, and I might still be out there. But they loved on me, and they knew I just got out of prison, and that's okay. And I'm just telling you, listen, God is calling us to do great things in this community. And I know that me and our staff, our leaders can only do so much. But what we could do with you, with an army of people, we would turn this city upside down. We would make a real difference in this community, because there's people that live all up and down these streets, and they just need someone to listen to their story. They need somebody to look at them like a real person and go, you have a story to tell, and we're here, we're going to listen to your story. You're a valuable person. You're not a number, you're not a statistic. You are a person who was created in the image of God. So whenever we look at people and go, why does Jesus eat with such scum? Really? Because that's a person created in the image of God. That's a masterpiece that God made. How dare us ever look down on anybody because maybe they made some bad choices with their life. Maybe they didn't have the advantages you had growing up. Maybe they were born into poverty. Maybe, whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why people end up in the situation they're. God is calling us to love everybody. And let's just let him sort it out, right? They're not living their life the way you would agree with. That's all right. Love them. We're going to be a church. And I need you to be on this mission with us. We're going to be the kind of church that just, man, if there's just one church in Independence that loves on people, regardless of their situation, it's going to be Grace Church. And I know there's some other great churches too, but we are going to be that kind of church. And I can't do it without you.